Hello, once again, my professional BDR friends, colleagues, and otherwise. This is a discussion about becoming a contractor and basically the beginnings of starting with Lead Generation Hub. So the four things we're going to go over are what are your earnings? What is to be expected of you every week? What happens in the event that you can't make your commitment, which is completely understandable, so long as it's reasonable, and what are my expectations for pay and all that good stuff. And so why don't we start to break that down? So I got my little sheet here. Oops, I need to allow. For those of you watching at home, I just updated my computer, so it took a moment to adjust to that. Anyway, so I'm not going to redo the film. I'm just going to keep going. Contractor stuff, what you should have at this point. So you should have your LGH contract, which I would send you via DocuSign, and you can read over and sign. And basically, it's your commitment between LGH and you. The QuickBooks Form 1099, which is something that I send directly out of QuickBooks. You fill that out when you see fit. And so that's how I can effectively pay you. You should also have an LGH email, which is basically your first name dot last name or some fun variation thereof. You should have Slack access. You should have Orem access. You should have Lucid access. And then you should have a LinkedIn. One of these days, I genuinely look forward to getting everyone access to Sales Navigator. But if you have a regular LinkedIn, that should be just fine. And then also too some advice for taxes and things. And again, I'm not an accountant, but I could certainly one-on-one tell you a bit about taxes. But I'd also point you in the direction of a gentleman named Alex, who does mine. And I will be providing the email address and information to get a hold of him, probably directly to you if for some reason you would like to talk to him, to ask any tax related questions. Also, if you looked to start an LLC for yourself and do the benefits there, but all those types of questions can go to him. So assuming you have all of those things above, and so maybe take a screenshot of this and like check them off as we go. I want to talk about the second thing on the list, which is the expectations every week. If you have made it this far and you're watching these videos, it's very likely that we had a conversation about what is to be expected from you, and you have agreed that you'll do something to the tune of 7 to 12 hours a week, which shouldn't really be much more than that. In fact, in each contract, I have a do not exceed, so that way, you're not working like 25 something hours or what have you. But this is intended to be, a fractional job, a part-time job, unless you are part of the full-time core staff of Lead Gen Hub. So that being said, I want to kind of settle the ground now, I suppose, and I'll stop sharing so you can see the whole picture. But I want to settle foundation now is that I and the team, we're all very understanding, right? If something happens to you, if something changes, if you can't do your dials that day, I mean, totally get it, right? But I do ask that you have the capability to try to make it up, right? I further ask just communicate, right? And just tell us if for some reason you can't do it and when you plan to get do it, because we promise our clients X amount of hours of work by you folks, right? And that includes myself, because as you know, I also do the calls. And so if for some reason you have an issue, right, just communicate it and don't commit to us if you think that you're going to have an issue. And I understand that your regular job may be extremely demanding, and I want to absolutely respect that. I would say most people in our profession, we all have side hustles, and if you don't have one, maybe Lead Generation Hub can be your side hustle, right? If you're a college student and or what have you, if you have a part-time job elsewhere, if you're looking for a job, right? I mean, you are the master of your schedule. But my point is that if you commit to us, right, please follow through on that commitment. We are full-heartedly depending on you to follow through on that commitment. Okay, so that's just again just to lay the foundation of understanding there. Now, what are your earnings? So first, everybody is on more or less $18 an hour, right? And I know I've been looking at a lot of companies. I've had a lot of people tell me like, yeah, like a lot of these jobs are commission only, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to make it commission only. I absolutely insist to pay you something for your time. And I realize that the majority of people that are listening to this, $18 an hour is not that much. And I get it, right? But at least it's something, right? And I hope, in the future, the standard is going to be $30 an hour, that's what I want to strive for. So that way we can you really feel it hopefully in your pocketbook, right? But as of the moment, it's usually anywhere between 15 and $20 an hour. So I put my math here at 18. So for a full week, you work 10 hours, that's 180 bucks. You're gonna get $65 per meeting from Lead Gen Hub, right? But each client is going to have their own incentive as well. So that being said, if we are doing the most conservative on the lowest bar, the lowest band, call it what you will, okay, it's $65. That would be the lowest one. So we multiply that by 3, we have 195. Okay. And then let's say the client bonus, usually client bonuses are anywhere between 25 and 150. It's just going to depend, right? And it's also going to be a little bit obnoxious for us. So we may change the parameters of this, but it might be a little obnoxious for us just to make sure, like, well, which ones are worth 125, which ones are whatever. I mean, pretty much anything that leads to a deal, they're going to give maximum everything. But nonetheless, let's just say, let's say again, it's on the lower, more conservative side. And let's say it's 40 bucks, right? Which I can virtually guarantee you I can get out of any client, as long as it's a qualified deal and as long as it's a qualified lead and it's getting somewhere. And we're talking about qualified leads in a second. But the client bonus, so you put another $40 on top of that, you multiply that by 3, and then we have 120. And then let's say you hit your 3 meetings, which again is the lowest bonus threshold. You hit your 3 meetings a week bonus, which is $100. Right now for like Veritas, it's 250. We have a $750 one in there if you can hit 5, right? So like again, it's going to be, they're going to be published. They're going to be different each week, right? These are bonuses from them, but your foundation is always going to be your base pay. Your foundation is always going to be 65. And then that should come to your total of $595 a week, right? So if we consider then, I'm not sure what I was doing there, so I'm just going to delete that. If we consider then from a monthly bonus perspective of 4 weeks, 10 hours per week, hitting your minimum for threshold of what we hope is going to be 3 meetings a week, your total long-term, this is a bonus, and I'll talk to you about that one in a second, but your total in 3 meetings a week, would be a total of $400. Your hourly $720, $18 times the 40 hours in a month, right? So that's, again, if I'm assuming 4 weeks, 10 hours a week, a total of $40, or I'm sorry, total of 40 hours, your $18 an hour multiplied by 40, and then your standard meeting bonus, again, if you hit 3 times 4, or if you hit 3 a week multiplied by 4, right? A total of 780. And then we add a client bonus on top of that, you should hit your monthly of roughly $2,380, right? And if the math sounds a little bit weird, that's okay, right? I think you guys can do it on your own. You get it $18 an hour multiplied by 10, $65 per meeting multiplied by 3. And then of course the bonuses on top of that, which will be obvious. And I also too, assuming you are able to sign up through QuickBooks, I plan on paying you weekly. That's the goal. And I think that's kind of fun. I think you can kind of plan on it, right? So if you plan on, going somewhere and spending money, hopefully you can say, oh, well, I'll do my hours and get my couple meetings this week, and I'll be able to pay for a nice dinner, right? Like that's what I hope the feeling is. Okay. So what if I can't do, we already talked about what in the event that you can't make your commitment, right? We already talked about that. And then how do I get paid? I think we also covered that too. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is what is a qualified lead? So I have some parameters just to be clear, and keep in mind, I think anybody that's coming through here probably knows me, and it's very realistic in this nature of what a qualified lead is, right? We're going to define the ICPs, and if for some reason our ICPs are engineering managers, and then you decide to schedule a meeting with a fighter pilot, like obviously, or an astronaut, even though that'd be cool. We're obviously not going to count that as a qualified lead, right? So it just needs to be the ICP. It needs to be some sort of conversation around the product. And then ideally we get the client to go to that meeting that you then decide to set And it's going to be, you know, really the reaction as well of whether or not that meeting even meant anything, right? And I can pretty much guarantee you I'll start to hear the complaints and concerns if for some reason the consistency of the meetings are not what they think to be worth it, right? But also at the same time, I very much tell the clients and get the clients to understand that not every meeting you have is the intent that they're going to switch a light, like a light switch on, and they're gonna buy, right? A lot of the meetings, which you guys know, in the journey of good business development, in that journey, a lot of the meetings that you have are really going to be discovery related meetings about how to extract information. And on each site, right? So if you go to the website and you go to the client site, it's going to say discovery information. And that's the kind of, and it's just, we're just going to continue to add to that. And so we know what to pull from, but that will be talked about in a later video. However, nonetheless, what is a qualified meeting? So reading these aloud as you can see them, and again, you are welcome to take a screenshot, but the prospect must accept the meeting via company email or agreed on method. Right now, for the couple clients we do have, they prefer that we log into their email domain and send out the meetings. I know that's not as convenient for us, but it also doesn't take that much time, right? So we are very likely going to hopefully change that to like a Calendly, since I know Calendly is free and folks can set that up. And then at the same time, hopefully they're using Zoom, so we can just, you know, use their private Zoom link and then just post it and do it that way. I think that's probably the easiest. But again, it's going to depend on the method, and as long as you are following that method, then yes, it should check that box. And box number 2, prospect must attend a Zoom meeting or Google Meet or whatever it is agreed upon. I think that one's obvious. Your prospect to which you have booked a meeting with must show up. And there will be later discussions on what can help them to show up, right? So for example, proactively sending them an email and saying, hey, I look forward to still talking on this day and this day, you know, shooting them a text, shooting them a LinkedIn message. All of those things help to enable the prospect to show up and for it to be a qualified meeting. And so in the world of good business development, because the only people that you're talking to are ones that you actually have, that you want to pull information from and think that are worthy, there should be no issue putting that additional time in there, right? To make sure that they show up. And it's really not that much. Again, it's like 4 days out, send them an email and say, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you on the meeting. 3 days out, shoot them on, you know, 2 days out, shoot them a LinkedIn message, you know, just as a reminder. If they change it, then change it, you know, whatever that situation happens to entail, but nonetheless, making sure that they show up, right? The other box, as I scroll down, BDR should attend pre-meeting, the meeting itself, and a post-meeting. Now, this is the one that we're going to be flexible on, okay? We're going to be flexible because I know, again, in the essence of fractional, a lot of these meetings are going to want to happen like in the middle of the day. If you do it a couple weeks out and you're able to put it on your schedule and able to show up, I think that would be wonderful. But as long as you can do a pre-meeting, and even if that meeting can only happen maybe during Slack, but you got to tee it up. You have to tee it up for the executive that's about to go in there and have that discussion. If you give them nothing, that is not good business development. Okay. And I think we can all agree. You have to, you know, you have to at least spend 3 minutes with them, maybe a day before, whenever, right? Ideally, it's 10 minutes before the meeting, during, you know, and then you have the meeting, the meeting happens, then you meet them 10 minutes after meeting. That is the optimal, right? But if you can't do that because your schedule doesn't permit, please make sure that you find time to do it, maybe a day before, 2 days before, whatever, right? Just don't let them go in there with no information and just, you know, they pop in on the calendar, right? That would be very bad for everybody involved, and that would certainly indicate that it would not be a qualified meeting. And really, I don't think we can make exceptions there, right? We gotta collect the information. We gotta tee it up. I think maybe the only exception is, I don't know if it led to a deal, and you got lucky, but that would be lucky, and that's just not the way that we don't want to depend on luck. We want to depend on our capabilities. The next box, relationship mapping. Okay. Again, within the pre-meeting, the meeting itself, the post-meeting, In the post meeting, you can add all that information, the framework, right, of doing the relationship map, like what the pain was, what information you discovered. You can write all that stuff down on your relationship map quite literally during the meeting if you wanted to, if you're able to go to the meeting. And then definitely more so the post meeting. And so let's say you couldn't go to the meeting itself, and you're going to go and talk to our client, the account executive, at a later date. Okay, you should have that relationship map open. You should ask him or her, what did they extract? What information did they get? And you should be able to see your path starting to develop of who the buyer is. Right. If you don't have the buyer, you should start seeing the path of what the next step is going to be, even if that step is to remove them entirely, right, from the sales cycle. We're going after Starbucks. We find out that Starbucks isn't going to buy from us for 2.5 years because they have layers of bureaucracy and there's a million people and all right, so we're going to cut them from the list. So, that's fine, right? That is good business development. Knowing who to go after and when is good business development. And so that's the relationship mapping piece as far as expectations, and there will be separate training specific to what those expectations are of the relationship map. But I mean, it is pretty simple, guys and gals. It is simply telling the story in a virtual way with notes that talk about the pain and that annotate credibility on paper, right? And so, like I said, there is separate training on this, but it is extremely important. I think it's definitely a firm divide of the standard methodology of business development, which I don't think is that good, versus great business development, which I think is always making sure that you take good notes, that you write this stuff down, you can visually anticipate and expect, what to do next. The better notes you take, the more pictures you put on there, the easier it is to go into the next call because it's all right in front of you. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So I think we covered everything. Again, just in the short summary, there's all your contractual stuff. Take a quick screenshot. You should have access to all that. And then your pay. Oh, and one last thing about your pay. If you're wondering how it is, I know that you're doing X amount of hours. Please allow me to show you exactly what that looks like. And what it looks like is the following. When I go in to verify how much you're actually working to pay your hourly, I'm simply going to go here. I'm going to say, last week, right? Let's pretend it was Mar. I was the only one doing calls since we just got Orem the last week, so you can only see my calls. But what is going to be more realistic is we'll say this week. And so when I do my pay and pay folks on Friday, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to look for your name. I'm going to look at Christine, for example, and I'm going to scroll on over. I'm going to look at her session time, which I think is conservative in your favor. Okay. If I wanted to, I think be a little skimsy, I can just look at dial time, right? But I'm actually going to look at session time because I think some of that's preparation and taking notes and things of this nature. Not really going to look at talk time, but yeah, session time. So 58 minutes. So I'm going to round that up, obviously, and then pay Christine her whopping $20. But also, Christine made a couple meetings, so she'll get the money on top of that, assuming that those go well. But and then plus her training, right? So we are going to keep logs to a certain extent, and I'll share those with you. But those logs should be really easy as far as like pay logs, and those will have like the training and things. So like if you're verifying, if you're doing the training for path formats, it takes you 2.5 hours, you will absolutely be paid for the 2.5 hours, right? And a lot of it is based on trust because I don't have a way to verify it. And I trust to say, that if you say you did it, I believe you. Anyway, that pretty much covers it. And so that's the beginnings of what you get paid, a little look into how we manage that stuff. Defined a bit about qualified leads. And if you have any questions, of course, let me know. Thank you very much for listening. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.